I'm going to share a secret to create client-attracting content without getting stuck. Copy is not written. Copy is assembled. So said Eugene Schwartz, one of the most prolific and successful direct response copywriters of his day. He never, get this, Eugene Schwartz never suffered from writer's block. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you a framework to create client-attracting content inspired by that quote by Eugene Schwartz. The idea that copy is not written, that copy is assembled, is magnificent, happy, great news if you ever suffer from writer's block. Or if you create emails and social posts and other content and you don't know if it works, why it worked, why it didn't work, or any uncertainty around your content creation. Or if you feel like content creation is kind of a slog, more frustrating than fun. Eugene Schwartz understood that content creation is not some magic art. You don't summon the muse and hope that the creative well starts flowing. No, he understood that content creation is a craft where you gather the pieces and you assemble them. I'm going to share with you an easy way to do it, to gather the pieces and to assemble client-attracting content so that you can transform your emails, your social posts, your videos, all of your content from prospect repelling to client attracting with confidence and clarity. To reveal how to do this, I'm going to start with a story of a business coach who works with business owners, helps them get off the hamster wheel. And one of the things that this business owner does is she teaches her clients how to delegate. So she wrote a blog post, an email about how to delegate, and the blog post went something like this. Delegation is one of the most important skills that any business owner can master. To delegate properly, here are 5 tips. Tip number 1, blah, 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 blah. And on it went. And no one read it. No one read it. No one read it. No one got to the bottom where the call to action said, schedule a free consultation with me. And the reason no one read it is it was just a bunch of information. There are probably 800, maybe 8,000 posts or emails out there with business coaches teaching how to delegate. But the problem is that information is not enough. If you wish to captivate your audience and draw them in and get them to pay attention to you and read to the bottom, you have to combine information and entertainment. You have to make your content infotaining, and that's where storytelling comes in. 3 things happen when you weave stories into your content, when you deliver information with stories. Number 1 is that your audience remembers the information. Our brains are wired to respond to stories, and stories stick. Number 2, when you deliver information with stories, the audience's brain, it releases feel-good chemicals, oxytocin and things like that, so that your audience has a feeling of connection and bond with you. We know, like, and trust storytellers. And number 3, when you tell stories to promote products and services, your audience is more likely to buy more and to buy at higher prices. There are all sorts of studies to prove this, that stories sell more. So this business coach called on me. She hired me to create story-powered content. And one of the first things we did is we looked to create a story-powered version of this delegation thing. And here's what we did. We already knew the lesson Businesses need to delegate. Business leaders need to share and delegate. And I asked her why that lesson. Why is it so important for businesses to delegate, for business leaders to do this? And she talked about the fact that, well, the business owners she knows, they feel stuck. They feel like all of the responsibility for the business is on their shoulders. They feel like the weight of the world is on them. And they want to be able to let go, to spend time away from the business, to get away, but they don't know how. And so I asked her, what do you do? And she said, that's the promise. I help them let go and get away. That's the promise that I make, among other promises, to my clients. So I said, well, share with me a story of helping a client do this. And she did. She shared with me a story of a business owner who, in 20 years of running his business, had never taken a vacation longer than a long weekend. Wow, 20 years. And so we turned that anecdote into a story. I know a business owner who had never gone on vacation for longer than 4 days in 20 years of running a business. That's how the email started. And then she told the story of how he ultimately let go and got away, how he went on vacation, hammock on the beach, overlooking the ocean at sunset, and he returned from vacation, and everything was going beautifully at his business. Everybody was fired up, the business was better than ever, and he felt great. And then in that story, it says, what changed? And the next line is delegation instead of dumping. And what followed were the same 5 tips that she had in that information only blah, 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 boring piece that nobody read. But now they were reading it. The reason they were reading it is because they could relate. They felt what that business owner felt. Anyone who feels frustrated and stuck and wants to let go and get away is going to tune in and turn on and read to the bottom and schedule an appointment. That's what happened. That's the difference between story-powered content and information-only blah, blah, blah. 4 things are going on in this story. There's a promise. There's a promise. I promise that I am going to transform your business life. You're going to be able to let go, and you're going to be able to get away. There's an anecdote, or excuse me, there's a lesson. There's a promise, then there's a lesson. How are you going to let go and get away? By delegating. And then it's all wrapped up in an anecdote about a business owner who never went on vacation, followed by a next step. Schedule an appointment with me. Promise, lesson, anecdote, next step. A plan. A plan. Every great piece of content, of story-powered, client-attracting content is built with a plan. Promise, lesson, anecdote, next step. That's how Eugene Schwartz did it. That's how I do it. And that's how you can do it. But not all plans work. Not all of them work. And one of the reasons is because sometimes the stories are just all blah, 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 me, look at me, and the audience can't relate. There are 3 principles that you have to apply to your story plan to make it work. Principle number 1, keep the focus on prospects' emotional journeys, on your audience, on the people you serve. That journey from before to after, from stuck to unstuck. Principle number 2, keep it personal and human. Easy when you're telling stories, because stories, of course, contain humans and characters, and they're personal. Principle number 3, keep it simple. I know so many business coaches, so many so-called storytelling coaches who want to make this thing so complex. They coach that writing a story for business is sort of like writing a mini screenplay. You've got Yoda, you've got Luke, you've got conflict and resolution. You have to master all of the elements of the hero's journey. I know one business coach who says that there are 10 elements that you have to include in a good business story. 10. Somebody says to me, put 10 elements in a business story and call me simple, but I think you're talking about maybe 7 or 6 too many. P-L-A-N, 4 elements that you have to include. Simple. It doesn't have to be so darn complicated. So let me answer a couple of questions that you may be asking, that you may be thinking. Where do you find these elements? Where do you find the promise and the lesson? Well, 3 E's that you have to think about: empathize, envision, and enable. If you think about your target audience, if you empathize, put yourself in their shoes, what are they feeling? What are they thinking? What do they need? And then you also envision, where do they want to go? That's what this coach did. They're feeling stuck. They want to let go. That builds the promise. If you empathize and envision, you can find the promise. And then you have to think about, how do you enable that promise? And therein lie the products, the services, the lessons that you deliver. 3 E's, and you find the promise and the lesson. What about the anecdotes? I hear from so many business people who say, oh, I don't have any funny stories to tell. I don't know where to come up with anecdotes that would be entertaining and useful for my audience. Here's the good news. You're surrounded by anecdotes, and they're easy to find if you know where to look. This anecdote about the business owner, I simply asked the client, my client, how about a experience from one of your clients? Share with me an experience with one of your clients. And she easily found it once I prompted it. Then later I asked her, how about a story about you? Tell me a story about a time that you experienced a boss who didn't delegate well or who delegated really poorly. She said, oh, I have a bunch of stories about that. Great news. You have a bunch of emails or social posts. You'll never run out of ideas. We have a finite number of promises and lessons that we share with our audience. There's an endless number of anecdotes that we can wrap around those promises and lessons, so we never get stuck. I worked with another business coach who also teaches delegation, and we went to AI. We said, hey, AI, come up with some examples from books, literature, movies that demonstrate the importance of delegation or the danger of not delegating properly. And it came up with a bunch, including the movie The Devil Wears Prada. And that business coach said to me, oh, that's a great example. I love that movie. I'm going to tell that story. So cool, so easy, so fun. I recently visited Reddit, and I found a business owner or a marketer who was complaining. He's saying, nobody tunes in, nobody likes my stories, my life stories. Nobody's paying attention to me. And I immediately thought to myself, what a great anecdote for me to deliver a promise and a lesson. The promise is transform your content from boring to brilliant, from prospects tuning out to prospects tuning in. And what's the lesson? Well, one of the lessons is story power principle number 1. Put the focus on prospects' journeys. He was failing. This was a cautionary tale because he was out there telling people about his everyday life. Nobody cares about your everyday life if you don't hook it to your existing clients. So 2 ways that stories are created. Number 1 is you start with the promise and the lesson, and you find the anecdote. Number 2 is you start with the anecdote, as I did. I found this anecdote on Reddit, and you say, oh, that's a great vehicle for delivering this promise and lesson. So stories are everywhere, and they will work, and they will draw prospects in and transform them to clients if you remember 4 elements: promise, lesson, anecdote, next step, and 3 principles. Keep the focus on prospects' emotional journeys, keep it human and personal, and keep it simple. And if you do that, you too can create client-attracting content with ease and without writer's block. Thank you very much.